Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, inspiration, and connections from all flavors of Passive House, check out passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, get your technical questions answered, and contribute to the community forum. There's loads of free information for experienced professionals and people just starting out on their Passive House journey. We hope to see you at one of our construction, tech, or weekly Global Passive House Showcase webinars. In the meantime, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler-Welsh, coming to you from Auckland in New Zealand.
And I'm Zack Semke, coming to you from Seattle, Washington.
How's it going, Zach?
It's going well. I finally am testing negative for COVID, which is great. That's exciting news.
Nice. Yeah.
And we are, late in August now, and in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, and we have not had any wildfire smoke this entire summer. Knock on wood. So it's been pretty glorious. Yeah. How are you doing?
Yeah, good. We're doing all right. Kids have had winter colds, which is something new for a little while. Haven't had those for a couple of years.
Right.
So we're working through that, but we have been good in Auckland. Nelson, on the other hand, top of the South Island, has had record floods, and they're starting a big cleanup this weekend as the waters start to recede there. And there's been a lot of talk about building in flood-prone areas and what that's going to be doing to house prices, cost of insurance, things like that. I also have a colleague at work who is from Pakistan, and just heard again that there's been some big flooding and a number of deaths in Pakistan, and that there's just two areas. That there's other extreme weather events they're hearing about all around the place. So it's kind of wild out there. And similar to you, though, I kind of feel very fortunate. We've had a bit of wind and rain here, but relatively calm considering what else is going on.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, insane droughts in Europe and Asia, and China is going through crazy droughts, and it's
so we should get on to some good news.
Let's do that. Let's do that.
Let's do that. So because there is lots of good news going on as well. So let's before we do that, thank our sponsors.
Yeah, definitely. So all of the work we do here at the Accelerator comes thanks to generous support from our sponsors. So a big thank you to our founding sponsors: 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxt Ingwe Architects, Glavel Foam Glass Gravel, Minutair All-in-One HVAC and Dehumidification Units, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, Rockwell North America, Stocorp, and Zola Windows. Thank you, too, to our champion sponsors, Icon Windows and Doors and Proseco. And thank you to our stakeholder partner, NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority.
Nice. You got some Passive House news for us, Zach?
I do, yes. So the news that I have to share are a couple of links to some really great Passive House specials that were presented by Rocky Mountain PBS, so Rocky Mountain Public Broadcasting System. So the first one is an episode of what's called Colorado Voices, and the name of the episode is Building Back Better After the Marshall Fire. And the Marshall Fire was in the Boulder, Colorado area. It decimated, I think, over 1,000 homes in Boulder County, and much of the building back will include homes that are built to the Passive House standard, or Passive House standards. So there's a great dive into a couple of the families who were hit by the fires, and then also the story of their plans to to build back. And then we also have a piece by Rocky Mountain PBS that is a tour with Andrew Michler. And Andrew is a longtime Passive House pioneer and has Colorado's first certified Passive House, and it's a cabin on a mountainside in Colorado. So he does a tour in this special of his house, and it's a really great, I think it's like an 11-minute piece that talks of this beautiful cabin. Yeah.
I've seen he's been a favorite keynote a couple of Passive House conferences.
And I'll include
he's got a great book as well, doesn't he? He's got a really beautiful coffee table book.
Yes, he does. Great book. And also he was on, I think he kicked off the Passive House Accelerator live season almost exactly a year ago. So I'll include a link to that presentation of the temporal house that he made in September of 2021.
Awesome stuff. Now, those articles that you mentioned, the videos, and was it the Rocky Mountain?
Rocky Mountain PBS, yeah.
PBS. Is that, are they dedicated to that type of like sustainable building, sustainability at all? Is that like just a mainstream?
I don't think so. It's the Colorado public TV channel.
Awesome.
So I think they're just, So this
very cool.
Passive House is rising to this kind of newsworthy place, which is great.
Yeah. Well, I've been looking through a bunch of stories on my Passive House Google Alert, and there's some ones that just keep dominating the top. Some of those big stories that we've already talked about, the big towers and the tall buildings that get the headlines. So I've been looking around at some of the smaller stories, and I found there's a nice little article in something called Tri-City News, which is from Canada. And there's a story there about a place in, I don't know how to say this. It's Coquitlam, or is it Coquitlam? Coquitlam. So apologies for
Coquitlam. Yeah, I think
Coquitlam. There we go. And the article starts off a Scandinavian-inspired townhouse project called Skagen, and you can have a look at the Skagen. Actually, have a really good website about the Passive House features of their the townhouses that they've built, and these townhouses are Passive House. It doesn't say in the article that I'm reading here whether they're certified Passive House or not, but it does definitely imply that. And there's some great information on the Skagen website. But it's just a local newspaper article, just amongst all their other local news, and I think this is a really great example of a story about. In this case, it's quite a big development, 52 units in this townhouse development. It's under construction at the time of writing, and it's sold out. So 52
awesome.
Passive House units, and people have basically bought them before they've even finished, which is really, really cool. So I guess there's some kind of similarities there, that there's little stories like that are popping up in non-Passive House blogs or newsletters, or things that we might normally see. It's just becoming noticed by regular journalists and regular reporters, which is awesome.
Yeah, it is. That's good stuff.
All right. Well, let's get on with this week's feature interview, shall we?
Yes, please do.
All right, so Karen, I caught up with Karen recently. She's an architect based in Christchurch, and she was up in Auckland. I actually caught up with her a few years ago, and she had then just completed her Passive House training course with Dr. Cara Rosemeyer in Auckland again. Since then, she's opened her own practice and started working for herself, and now that practice employs a couple of staff, and she does sustainable architecture. She doesn't exclusively do Passive House, but she certainly uses PHPP and uses Passive House in all of her work. And the reason why I was so keen to chat with Karen was that she's been involved in a great development, which she's going to talk about, Bushland Park, just on the outskirts of Christchurch. And I was kind of having to think about this, that if I could choose a place to live, somewhere on the outskirts of Christchurch would be at pretty top of the list. Christchurch is a great size city. It's being rebuilt after the Canterbury earthquakes over 10 years ago, and it's getting pretty well established now. They've had an incredible ski season at Mount Hutt, which is just over an hour or about an hour away of central Christchurch, and then access to Queenstown and the beautiful rest of the South Island. There's a lot of really nice things going for Christchurch. It's quite a nice sized city, an international city. And they've also got some great architects there, of which Karen is one. So here's her story, a bit of an update on where she's at and the wonderful Bushland Park development. Anyway, let's talk about Bushland Park. So
okay,
that's going. But before we do that, what have you been up to in the last 3 years? Because you didn't have Meta before then.
No.
Before somebody else stole your name.
So somebody else. My name was first. There's a story behind my name.
Right.
My name's actually a family name that's been handed down through generations, and it's actually Meta, but I use Meta for the architecture. It's a German first name.
Is that right?
Yeah, my daughter's middle name and so forth.
So it's got nothing to do with the metaverse?
No, nothing to do with the metaverse. No. And the really cool part of the story is that my dad's cousin, it's her first name, and she always wanted to be an architect, but back in the day, and she's like heading towards her 90s now, women didn't train as architects.
Right.
So she became a draftsperson, and she was a draftsperson for her husband, who was an architect.
Wow.
And so by having her name, we've kind of carried it into my architectural practice.
Nice.
So it's nothing to do with the metaverse.
Prior to that, you were just Karen, weren't you?
I was. Prior to that, I was a small practice of myself and one other person working from home as I juggled family and like young kids and babies and the work. I mean, I was still on the Passive House trajectory, and it started with our own house, and that was our first learning curve. But it wasn't until 2 years ago, I think, really, that we got premises, we got more staff.
How's it been in your own home? How's that performed?
It performs as well as it could for something that had some of the components, but none of the modelling and none of the real knowledge. We did it on a low budget.
Yeah.
And so it has more insulation, it has HRV, it has airtightness that we all did ourselves, but it doesn't have high performance windows. And
right.
Yeah.
So it's not certified? No. Because where was that on when you were doing training? Was that
way beforehand? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you already had that?
Had that. Done a number of sort of high performance houses without doing the thermal modelling, and then it just came to a point after I'd had the last child that I had the capacity in my life to do the training, and from then on we have been thermally modelling almost every project that goes through the office.
So post-training, you get qualified.
Yep.
Congratulations. 3
Thank
years
you.
ago.
It's like having a driver's licence and never having sat in front of a car.
It is a bit like that.
Yep.
And it's a big achievement too. Mm. But then what happens? Do the clients come flooding in, all wanting a passive house?
The same clients come in, but then they know that you can model, and then you can start to give them more of your a wider service. And it's just been a slow build up over the last 3 years. We live in a small country. I live in a smaller city. Word gets around that you can actually do the architecture and the passive house at the same time. Not a lot of people can do both of them. A lot of them will do the architecture and then get somebody else in to do the thermal modelling. So it's still a lot of it is word by mouth. A lot of it is still people coming through connections, coming through builders in that typical New Zealand way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But is it predominantly still people knowing that they want something above the building code? It's not you trying to convince someone of that?
No, it's people come to us for high performance houses.
Right.
Yeah.
And they know to come to you because of word of mouth and what they've seen out there.
Yep.
Right. And so you're still doing, how much of your work it would now be full Passive House?
Certified, not a high proportion of it.
Right.
Most people don't spend the money to go to the full extent, but the way we design, the construction we design with, everything we do is as if it was going to be a certified Passive House.
Yep.
And then what generally tends to change, partly it's client drive, because it does cost quite a lot more to certify. By the time you get our time and all the rest of the fees, the drive just isn't there from them. And also it's about the shape factor. So the way we're building in Christchurch is still timber frame construction, and we can do it if we do it really carefully and we can meet the standard.
Mm-hmm.
We're not having to go for massive thick walls or anything like that. But
and is it predominantly still single story?
2-story. Single and
so it's
2-story.
getting a bit more compact?
Yeah, it's definitely more compact, but then... So we're doing a set of 3 townhouses at the moment for another client, and we're aiming for certified low energy standard because they've got pop-outs under the recession planes. Right. So it's that complexity of geometry that just takes us away from the full.
So is that
certified.
infill? They filling into an existing site. And so that's interesting in townhouses. Would they be marketed as something special thermally? Mm-hmm. And then
market it as targeting Passive House low energy building.
Which suggests that there's a demand for that beyond being close to a fancy school. Or is location still the primary?
Location is still the primary thing.
Right.
So one of the things that the experience of doing Bushland Park has and watching, there's been a few passive houses that have sold in Christchurch. None of them have sold because they're passive houses.
Right. Yeah.
They have sold because of their location.
Yeah.
And
design.
And design and all sorts of other things like that, and proximity to a good school and view and so forth. The desire for a certified passive house is still not out there. The desire for better is.
Yep.
Certainly that's there, but certified people are not particularly bothered by.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's still impressive that a developer's willing to go down that path.
Well, this particular developer, Nest, have been doing it for years at a high performance level and are just starting to realise that they need to push in and get it certified and get it modelled properly.
Yeah. Yeah. So back to modelling, you mentioned that. So PHPP. Mm-hmm. Are you doing any other modelling, like thermal bridge modelling or anything in-house as well?
I send that to Jason Quinn.
Right.
I'm still an architect. I'm still dealing with all the different parts of the architecture. Right. When it comes down to the nitty-gritty of the physics, it's much quicker and easier for me to do.
But you are doing PHPP
I do PHPP in-house, absolutely. And I do it in-house because it's partially a design tool, and I can sit with a client and go, here we've got a window, this is causing you overheating. Yeah. If we change this glass, we can do that. Right. And we can have those discussions on a cost-benefit kind of level with the client. So it's a useful
design tool as much as a certification tool?
Yeah, not in the shape and form. Like, I've done it enough times now that I've got an intuitive understanding of how something's going to perform. Yep. But when it comes down to those nitty-gritty client decisions and they are debating about they really want that view here, or they're going to sit here. And often it's actually about overheating rather than heating load. Or we can say to them, we need to upgrade your insulation, we need to use this here, and this is the balance. And it's in those later stages that I find it really useful that we can do it ourselves.
I want to get on to Bushland Park, but before we do, windows, are you finding that you are specifying different windows around the building and different aspects?
Different glazing, yes.
For
same windows but different glazing.
And is that to do with reducing either having more solar gain where you want it and less?
Yeah, it's that fine balance between useful solar gain and unhelpful solar gain.
And reducing overheating.
Reducing overheating. Yeah.
So tell us about Bushland Park. How did that all happen?
So Bushland Park is a small development of 11 certified passive houses at the base of the Port Hills in Christchurch.
Yeah.
And it's the vision of the landowners, Ernst and Renata Frey, and they have been living and farming this land for 40 years.
Yeah.
And all around them, the land is being ripped up and cookie cutter, low density suburban development is going in. So you're taking farms with trees, often exotics, but trees, it's just been ripped up, and you've got 6-foot fences and you've got single dwelling houses.
New roadways and cul-de-sacs.
They've nurtured this land. It's provided for them and their family for so long, and they just did not want to see that same thing happen.
Yeah.
Now, over years, Ernst has been replacing all the exotic planting with native planting. Since Bushland Park has started, he's planted 7,000 native trees and another 2,000 wetland plants. So it's about, he realises that the city is expanding, but he wants to make it a positive impact on the ecology and also on the style of housing. So Bushland Park they are detached family units and they are larger units, but there's no 6-foot fences, there's no garages on streets, there's living streets that he's pretty much designed himself. And this is a guy, in his 70s, actively involved in the project, and he's put up a place to have volleyball courts, and there's basketball and there's seats and hopscotch.
Yeah.
So it's all about just those basic urban design principles of being able to see front doors and being able to be part of a community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And converting productive farmland into something that's not just another suburb.
Yeah.
So how far out of the CBD is that?
Christchurch isn't a big city.
No, it would have been out in the country.
Yeah.
Not too many years ago. You
was
would have
out in the
driven
country. Yeah, absolutely.
Past what?
It's towards Hallsville.
Yeah, and then 10 years ago, you would have been in farmland.
Absolutely, but that section of Christchurch, right up against the Port Hills and all the amenity that we've got there, is being developed fast.
Now it's
very, very fast.
Spreading out that way. Yeah. So did he know about Passive House?
He knew about it. He had been watching Ethos Homes for a while. And Pete from Ethos just got a call out of the blue post the first lockdown. Hi, you don't know me. I know you. I've been watching you. I'd like you to build my houses.
Right.
So Pete rang me and said, Karen, would you like to be involved and help?
Yeah.
So I've done a lot more higher density housing over in the UK. Ethos Homes have been primarily involved in single bespoke houses.
Yep.
They're very experienced passive house builders, but they haven't done anything
And you've done some
volume.
work with them previously?
I had done work with them previously.
Yeah. So they'd done standalone house. Pete's done standalone houses, but he's done relatively compact, still infill. He's done a few infills and sort of contemporary
dwellings, but generally clients have come for their own bespoke passive house, and that's the way the industry's been. But passive house needs to be more than just houses for people who are at the top end of the affordability range. We need to get better at doing this more cost effectively, because it's not necessarily that what we're doing is expensive, it's the bespoke nature of it.
Right.
And having to go through that design process and it. So with Bushland Park, the idea was not to step away too much from what we're doing already. So they are single dwelling units, but to really hone what we're doing and hone our construction systems and our detailing system, just to try and get really, really good at it and take out the unnecessary details that we don't need and unnecessary complication.
Yeah.
And so we've got, of the 11 houses, we have finished the first house type, which is 2 houses. We've got the next house type of 3 houses is consented and ready to start, and then we have designed the third stage as well. And through that process, the houses themselves, the detailing is now really sharp. It could be easily constructed. It's effective. It's coordinated. It looks good, which is really good from the architectural point of view. So the details on those, and as architects, we've taken that first one, which took a lot of teamwork to get together, and we're starting to roll it out, and we can see the efficiencies in our labour, and the thinking is all coming out in the latter stages of Bushland Park.
Which makes sense, because otherwise it's another bespoke house, and then you have to do all of that labour again. But if you're building similar materials on the same location and a similar footprint,
they're just different sizes of houses, different places that the cladding is on, but fundamentally that the package is the same.
Right.
Yeah.
What was the original brief that you got as the architect?
The original brief came from Ernst and Renata, and Ernst had worked with the surveyor to design the master plan. Some of the brief, a lot of the brief from the houses came from his background. He's originally Swiss, things that he had seen and grew up with. Two-storey houses with a loft space above them, the sort of extra bonus space that you can get. So it was a contemporary reimagining of that.
Yeah. And performance-wise?
Performance-wise, they're amazing.
But was that the brief? Make them amazing?
Make them amazing. I think Pete and I said to Ernst, you want to achieve these certain things, and the way that we can do this is by a certified passive house.
Yeah.
And of course, they're Passive House Plus. So they have one whole roof covered in solar panels. And for latter parts of it, we're hoping to achieve premium because we have a little bit more roof space.
Yeah. What are the main lessons learned from that first couple of buildings?
First couple of buildings, the biggest lesson has been about teamwork. So you can't do this without talking to people. And so on these houses, with having the developer, the builder as a developer, we were in direct contact with them the whole time, and all the way through the design stages, all the way through the detailing stages. And we honed this set of details just by constantly talking. Like, we'd look at a thing, we'd say, how do you guys want to build this? This is the design intent of it. They, so not just builder and us, but engineer, builder, us, and subcontractors as well. Pete has a really great team of subcontractors around him. And so we were doing, for example, recessed solar panels so that they don't stick up from the roof. And so we've got the cladding and roofing guy in at our office, drawing details for us, working with us to say, how do we put that together?
Yeah. And what about council? How do they?
Council were good.
Are they all right with it?
Slow, but
good. Because I can imagine that things like that, with insetting things into roofs, they might get nervous about.
Oh, that's a fantastic detail.
Right.
Yeah. It's not inset at the bottom, it goes down to a gutter at the bottom, but it just looks like a flat roof.
But did you consider them as part of that team, the council?
No. Right. Council have come a long way in their understanding of what we're doing. A few years back, they would not understand the types of details. Now we've actually got really good responses with council. We did go and have pre-application meeting with them to say this is our proposal. Yeah. But we've had no problems with the type of details that are associated with it. So in terms of that teamwork as well, one of the big lessons that we've learned is we've started with the first stage. We're going to design the next one, and our engineers, we can have a meeting with them at the beginning, and we're going, well, we'll take this strategy, that strategy, this is what we're going to do. And they're like, yep, fine, come back to me in a couple of months.
Nice.
So everybody's busy at the moment, but we're speaking the same language.
Yep.
And we're repeating it, and there are just so many more efficiencies in terms of the design process.
And Pete's done a bit of prefabrication on site. Is that?
He is.
Was that always part of the plan, or is that just how he works? Or why is he doing that?
Prefabrication has a huge part of making these buildings work well. He's actually prefabricating in repurposed farm sheds. So they have one of the big sheds that they use for all the wall panels. They do some of it out on a platform, and they've got storage there. And they prefabricate not just for Bushland Park, but for all their projects now.
Right.
And it's that almost that process of having his team do the prefabrication that solves all the problems before we get to site.
Yeah.
Particularly at the moment, so Christchurch City Council, their processing times are about 4 months. So that gives us a massive time that
was the target 20 days?
20 working days. So the consent goes in, the team at Ethos start doing the prefabrication drawings, all the questions come out. Then we get our mechanical engineer who's actually producing 3D models of where all the ducts and the ventilation is going. Everybody's talking to each other. By the time we've sorted that out, the subcontractors have come on board, we can shove another set of drawings under the council's nose and stamp a fully coordinated, ready to go set of drawings.
Yeah, right.
And
so that weight is fine. It's just you're using it to your advantage.
Using it to our advantage, and we get to site, and there's no questions.
Yeah.
Because it's been sorted. So to do a high performance building well, you can't make this stuff up as you go along.
Yeah.
It works best if the builders know what they're doing completely before they start on site.
Is that level of prefabrication? It's kind of local prefabrication.
It is,
and it's still relatively bespoke, isn't it? It's not like mass.
We're waiting for the market to catch up.
But is that at that scale? Is that scalable, like to a larger degree, or at that level of bespokeness?
Well, I mean, on large buildings, you're using BIM modelling and you've got clash detection and all that kind of thing going on in a commercial world. We're just doing it a little bit manually at the moment because we know how important it is. I guess if you're scaling up a passive house to a higher density, then you may, and larger projects, then you may potentially have that level within your capacity.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's good. It seems to be a good model of somewhere in between standing sticks of timber up on site individually, and at one end, and then a fully robotic automated factory at the other.
Because we don't have that. And you look around countries around the world and they have that, but we don't. And so, yes, it is a little laborious for us to do that.
Yeah. Because basically we're talking about wall segments.
Walls, roof, mid-floors.
So, and insulated, pre-lined?
For Pete, his aren't insulated. For other companies we work with who operate on a similar system, they will be the whole panel with insulation and tallow.
Right. Right. Yep. So essentially just doing a sort of frame, but building it lying down. Building it lying down
and getting rid of the timber. So your standard New Zealand house will have, or pre-nail will have sort of 25-30% timber.
Yeah.
Bushland Parkers are sitting at 12.9%.
Right.
And that's a huge amount more insulation.
Yeah.
We generally aim for 15, but we got it down quite a lot on that one. And that does take a team who understand and respect that we need as much insulation as possible.
And a structural engineer who's happy with that.
Structural engineer's happy. Structural engineer, we use timber specialists, understand thermal bridges.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. And what about cost? How's that tracking?
It's not tracking particularly cheaper than a bespoke house at the moment. Now, I think this is because we've started on that journey and we're going to learn from it.
Mm-hmm.
The houses themselves are targeted at a high end, so they have high end cladding and high end finishes.
Right.
And I think the houses themselves we've got down, we're very successful with, and we're rolling out the same thing throughout it. Where we've come a little bit more unstuck is again the bespoke elements, and these are on the outside of the house. So we've got our entranceways, which are large entranceways outside the thermal envelope, pergolas, outdoor room, carport, storage shed, anything that requires bespoke design is still costing more money. So the next question for us is to sit down with the team at Ethos and go, well, how can we make these more and make them similar throughout the development and take away those additional bespoke costs?
Right, because each level of customization is more work, more costs. Yeah.
But the houses are starting to get there.
Yeah, and I think that seems so an appropriate comparison is other bespoke architecturally designed homes. You're not comparing them with a a code compliant, barely minimum that's built by a group home builder in a subdivision.
What we were trying to achieve at the start of Bushland Park is not necessarily that we're going to do these a whole lot cheaper, is that we're going to get a whole lot better at them, and then we can work on the cost reduction. There's a lot of learning that's gone on over these first two.
And I mean, they must still be good value as a
They're excellent value. They're also for sale.
Yeah. Well, and if with all if you get approaching Passive House Plus,
certified Passive House Plus already.
I mean, that's for if you project that over 10 years of living as a total cost of ownership, they start to be very attractive, I would imagine, because I mean, what are the power bills going to be?
Yeah, and it's hard to talk cost in the current market as well.
Yeah,
these houses have just been completed. They have borne the brunt of delays and cost escalations.
Yeah.
So the thing for me, though, it's about repetition and not making it hard for ourselves, and that's the learning journey that we're on.
So what's next?
Next, for Meta Architects?
Yeah, so Bushland will finish or build that out and carry on with those on a good pathway there. Is there learning from that project that you're carrying on and other work that you're starting to do? We're
not just about Passive House.
Yep.
We're about a wider approach to architecture. There's a lot about higher density or medium density housing that we're experienced in, and we want to bring that experience into our practice. We're a small company, so we're just starting out.
Yeah.
So we're definitely targeting a lot more of that market. Our desire is to bring the cost of it down and bring higher performance housing to a wider group of people.
Nice. Yeah. And you've got a clear pathway now to be able to do that in the New Zealand context?
Yep.
Beyond just Christchurch?
At the moment, yes, we definitely go beyond Christchurch. At the moment, it's down to those relationships. It's working really well because we have this relationships with our teams, our builders, our consultants, and so that's where our focus is. But as in time, soon, we'll be expanding out of that. But it is just about teamwork. So if I have those people in a different place that I trust, that I know that will do, that I can work with, that will get on the phone, then we definitely work with them. But until we've actually established those relationships, we don't want to sort of fly in and go, hey, do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good work.
Thank you.
It's a really exciting project, though. It's obviously nice to have a client that's motivated that way and is behind it. But I think it's a really great model for New Zealand as well. Beyond just that individual bespoke.
Yeah, it's not a radical step away. It's a progressive step away, and each way we learn and build on what we've learned.
And that was Karen Manson, and she's the architect for Bushland Park development in Christchurch. What do you think of that, Zach?
Oh, I thought it was great. I really enjoyed hearing about Bushland Park and now looking at the images of her designs there, and just the simplicity and the compactness of form is great to see. I mean, you can do any crazy design and make a passive house if you have enough money to throw at it, right? But if you want to make a passive house project really affordable and cost effective, then you really need to be disciplined about your design decisions and the whole theme of elegant simplicity and compact form. And that's clearly that's the focus of our practice. And so it was really great to hear about and to see this coming to fruition for her and her client.
Yeah, I mean, they've kind of got that classic barn style, 2-story, simple pitched, what do you call that, single ridge roof.
Mm-hmm.
But they're still beautiful. And like you say, you don't have to have a big sprawling house with lots of glass to look good. They look good because of their form, and they just look like they would be really well functioning homes. And the other thing that makes it beautiful, the whole thing beautiful, is the setting and it's only going to get better once the native plants continue to get established, and the way that the houses are laid out, and you can just see a really good community developing in that little area. It's a nice little pocket.
Yeah, she alluded to the urban design concepts, and there's that movement of traditional neighborhood design. I don't know. That was a big thing in the 90s, but I know it was drawing from kind of age old kind of classic things like Eyes on the Street and places where people can interact with their neighbors and an orientation of the building to the community rather than walling yourself off with big garage doors and all that stuff. And you can see that coming to fruition with this image of the Bushland Park community here. So it's fun to see that and to hear about the passion that the client has brought to the whole project, in the sense of stewardship of the land, that they want to figure out how to kind of continue forward, even though they're moving from a farm, a farm to a community.
I think clearly the large part of the vision and this couldn't have been possible without him driving it as the client and as the property owner in the first place, and his decision to go a different way from just selling off a paddock and maximizing profit on sections sold, but having this vision of the community they wanted to create. To spend time and his own money planting native trees and sectioning off a piece of farmland to do that, I think is another example of just where his mind's at. So it's an amazing opportunity for Karen as the designer, and also Pete as the builder. So Pete, Ethos Homes, another previous guest, and a pretty well-known passive house builder around Christchurch. He's done some beautiful work already throughout and around Canterbury. Didn't get into a great deal, but I mean, I've spent a lot of time chatting with Pete in the past about the way he works, and that was the other thing that is really interesting about this project: the way that Pete has commandeered or made use of a big old shed on site, which was part of the farm, and has made that essentially a prefabrication factory. But it's not a painted concrete floor with fancy
bunch of robots
and automated CNC machines. It's not a great deal more than a table and a jig set up that's undercover, where he can construct walls that are lying down and therefore make them straight and make them square and insulate them and wrap them while they're undercover, and then just take them outside and stand them up. So it's kind of a luxury that you're not going to always have on a building site that's constrained by space. But it's a great opportunity to make use of that. And I know that while they were waiting for the consenting process of this project, Pete was able to use that facility to make walls for other building sites. So,
that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
In addition,
very cool.
In addition to solving, like Karen mentioned, all the problem solving that went into it, the prefab planning process kind of allows. So I loved her quote: "To do a high performance building well, you can't make stuff up as you go along." And so with the prefab stuff, the planning that they're doing, and during that waiting for the approval, they're able to work through a bunch of problems ahead of time, and then be able to really go, really fly once the green light is given. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of potential for this project beyond just the rest of the buildings that they're going to build, because they've finished 2 and they've got a few more to build on this site. But I'm really looking forward to seeing where Karen goes and where Pete goes and where the partnership goes, to be able to use the similar methodology of relatively simple looking design, but I know that a lot of thinking goes into that design, but also that relatively simple method of prefabrication as well, because I'm convinced that there's an opportunity there. I know that there are challenges to making it cost effective to do prefabrication at a scale that's not large. You don't always get the massive efficiencies that some people might think that would be there, because you've got to get a site. If you've got a warehouse or something where you've got to build bits of wall and you've got to store materials, and there are other costs involved, but there are also some great benefits of being able to build stuff. And I just see it all the time here in Auckland, of the stick frame buildings just getting completely saturated every time it rains. Go through this continual wetting and drying before they get some sort of flimsy wrap on, and hope that it's not too windy that wrap doesn't get completely shredded before the cladding eventually goes on. And so you end up with these buildings that are already weathered and far from ideal before they've even been finished. And being able to construct walls and make them weather tight and insulated and sealed under cover, and then just go and stand them up, and within a couple of days get the building sealed, is definitely a better way forward.
Yeah, no kidding. There's so many ways that makes sense.
So the other good news for anyone who's interested in moving to Christchurch is that some of these houses are still available. So people should jump on to the Bushland Park website and check those out, and you can buy one.
Yeah, they look beautiful, and it's too bad Christchurch is a little far away from Seattle, because that'd be
everyone needs a little holiday home somewhere to escape to.
Yeah, right.
It's a good investment.
Work on that. Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. All right. We got some stuff going on in Passive House world.
Well, we do. For the accelerator, we're really excited because we are about to restart our programming. We took August off for Passive House Accelerator Live, our weekly Zoom call. And we are about to kick off the first episode of this new season on September 7th. So Wednesday, September 7th for us in North America, and so, which makes it Thursday, September 8th for you in New Zealand and Australia. We're going to be joined by a couple of heavy hitters in the Passive House world and Passive House scene in New York: Lois Arena of Stephen Winter Associates and Mark Ginsberg of Curtis and Ginsberg. And many folks will know the organization Nessie, which is based in New England and focused on energy, deep energy efficiency and buildings. They're having their Building Energy NYC 2022 conference coming up here in the fall. I don't have the date in front of me. It's on September 15th. I do have the date in front of me. So our September 7th show is a conference preview, and the specific topic that Lois and Mark will be addressing is what we have learned from many built multifamily passive houses. So they'll dive into a lot of great lessons learned and pitfalls to avoid with multifamily passive house. So please join us. And then go to the Building Energy NYC 2022 conference on September 15th. There's also other stuff coming up, so we will include notes in show notes about those events, including, I know Passive House Trust has a webinar series that kicks off in September. I know stuff is cooking with PHN and Passive House New York and FIAS, of course, and I'm sure there's stuff in your neck of the woods too.
Yeah, what's going on? Passive House Institute New Zealand just had Hui last weekend,
Right.
And Passive House Australia has just announced recently last month a new CEO. So I want to reach out to them and check out what's going on in Australia as well as we start warming up into spring this coming week for us in this part of the world.
Right.
So some good, lots of good stuff happening. Awesome. So as I say, thank you to our listeners. If you want to get all that in writing or look it up, then definitely head over to passivehouseaccelerator.com. But also, if you sign up to the newsletter, then you'll get a lot of that each week in your inbox, and you get reminders and links and an idea of all the great stuff that's available out there.
Indeed.
All right. Thanks, Zach.
Thank you, Matthew.
That does it for this week, I think. And we'll be back in the show again with another interview next week on Passive House Podcast.